This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guests only. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, a podcast devoted to changing the way eating disorders and mental illness are viewed in our society. With your hosts, Jack and Linda Major and Ellen Bennett. Today's guest is Rzemieniak. Rzemieniak is a Carolyn Costin Institute Certified Eating Disorder Recovery Coach. Since 2018, she has provided one-on-one recovery coaching to individuals worldwide, working alongside her small team of other CCI-certified coaches in private practice. Before this, Sarah worked as an eating disorder dietitian until she realized that her true passion was in the coaching and counseling aspect of the work. Sarah has her own lived experience of an eating disorder and considers herself fully recovered from anorexia nervosa. She lives on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada, with her husband and their 2 young sons. You can find Sarah's contact information along with links to her website and blog in the show notes.
Welcome, listeners. We're so happy you've joined us today. Sarah will be with us momentarily, but first, I'd love to welcome my husband and soulmate, Jack Major, and our dear friend and fellow advocate, Ellen Bennett.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. It's great to be here, and thank you, Sarah, for agreeing to be our guest today. This is wonderful.
Welcome, and thank you for joining our next conversation. We let's get it started.
Welcome, Sarah. We're so glad that you're here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I just want to say to our listeners that the links for Sarah and this podcast are in our show notes. And here's my quote that speaks to following your passion. And it's by Howard Thurman, whoever he is. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And then go and do that. Because what this world needs is people who have come alive. That, no doubt, is Sarah. She has come alive. She's filled with passion. And she has an inspirational journey she's going to share with us today. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, that's a great quote.
Well,
Wow.
that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're thrilled that you're here. And you mentioned in your bio that you struggled with anorexia nervosa and are recovered now, which is wonderful. We all understand that the road to recovery is not a straight line. It is complicated, and the longer someone has an eating disorder, the more complex it can become. Can you share some of your personal journey? What was helpful and what was not helpful, and what were the supports that were the most helpful on your road to recovery?
Yeah, that's a good summary of the journey. Oh, there were so many phases to it, I think. And like listening to your guys' stories, and I listened to some of your previous podcasts, especially when of course I've read Emily, and but then hearing your own summaries of it and like your first episodes was really neat. And it kind of made me think a little bit more about this question in terms of how my journey kind of compared and contrasted a little bit. And the one thing that jumped out at me as I was kind of thinking about this question was that mine was taken really seriously from the get-go. And I think that was something I was really fortunate about. I think maybe it's partly the Canadians. I think it's a combination of maybe the Canadian system where insurance isn't getting involved, and also contrast to some people who I know who struggle in this respect. But I was a minor, so I think that also played a role in it. I was 13 at the time when it set in, and was like categorically underweight. So I feel like it kind of got jumped on right away, which I think helped because I really have so much compassion for what you described about Emily's journey and getting sent home from treatment, because I know for me, whenever I would go to treatment, like the few times I got sent, I knew I needed help, but the eating disorder was so strong that it wouldn't like give me permission really to ask for the help. but it was kind of like the system forced it on me. It was like, or my parents and the system was like, no, you need this. I never tried to leave against medical advice, so I don't know what would have happened at that point. But in terms of like getting in and staying in, the system was good. So I think that really helped. The first treatment center I tried in Vancouver, the first one I was like automatically sent to because of catchment area and stuff, I had a really bad experience with. So I would say this, along with what I hear from so many people, is one of the things that's definitely not helpful. It just had a very dehumanizing feel to it. I think you guys are so familiar with this, but where it's just very punitive, lots of rules. And all of the nurses, everyone I came in contact with just treated me with so much suspicion and so much like hostility, just like assuming I was trying to pull one over on them always. And just like, and I was such like a shy, like kind of like overachieving type A. I wanted to be the perfect little patient and stuff. So it was really hard on me to be viewed that way and treated that way. So I had a really hard time there. So I kind of just told my parents, like, I can't go back. That's not working for me. It was only day treatment as well. So I'm like, this isn't enough. It's not good. So we lucked out, and we were able to actually get me my healthcare to cover me to go to the province over. So I actually got most of my treatment in Alberta, and their programs had like a very different philosophy. I don't know. It was just very warm. They really treated you like a human. The head psychiatrist had a wonderful sense of humor. And so that was like a breath of fresh air. And that really helped. So I think from the get-go, those things were in my favor. But I always tell people, like, even then, like, I recognized there was a problem right away. I asked my parents for help. I got the help. And even then, it was so hard and such a long journey. And there were relapses and so much ambivalence. And like, so even with those things in place, like the treatment was there, I was motivated, still so hard. Like I was terrified of what recovery was asking of me. I didn't know how to let it go. So it was still so hard. But I think those things helped a lot, catching it early like that.
Are those places that you were at, are they still open now?
Yeah, they are. I don't know what they're like now. I know that psychiatrist has, the one I went to in Alberta has retired. So I'm not sure what the program is like now. I don't know anyone who's been through it in a long time. But
it's
the other ones are still open.
It's so wonderful that you are incredibly open and honest about how hard the journey was, because I'm sure that people, when they're going through this, certainly at the beginning, have no idea how difficult it can be. And to know that normalizes it. Okay, it's like, well, it's not just me that it's so hard for. And I think that's something that when you see somebody who's come out the other side, who's very honest, you're the living hope. And what you've chosen to do in your career to help other people is amazing,
Oh,
And that probably leads right into your question, Jack.
Yeah. And one thing these centers don't realize too, I think, is that how traumatic it is for the patient to be there in the first place. And now they're have all these punitive things happen because they're not following the rules, and how that makes it even worse.
One more thing,
Yes.
when you talk about suspicious and trust, so many people have said, well, they're treating me like I have this behavior, and I don't have this. I've never had this certain behavior, right? If somebody purges, or some people purely restrict, but they automatically assume the worst. And there's nothing that's perfect. These recovery residential centers certainly help a lot of people, but there's always room for improvement. And sometimes what you hear isn't always the whole truth either. But I just think, especially with adults, they need to be treated a little bit differently. And everybody needs to be respected regardless of their age. And if they drop the ball, then you deal with that. But that's just us.
Totally. And I felt like even if myself or the other patients there were like doing sneaky things or trying to do things, how nice it would have been for someone to just come and been like, how freaked out you must be right now, like how much fear you must have to feel like you have to do these things. Like that approach would have been so nice, because
A little bit of validation.
Yeah,
A
totally. Some
validation and compassion.
Empathy
Yeah.
for the
Compassion.
situation.
Totally. So there were, but luckily I did find that at the second program, which made a big difference.
That's great. Sarah, what led you to the path of becoming an eating disorder dietitian? And what got you thinking about changing direction to be a Carolyn Costin Institute Certified Eating Disorder Recovery Coach?
So like the eating disorder set in when I was like just shy of 13, but it really hijacked my entire high school, all of those years. And then throughout university, I was in a better place, but still struggling to a pretty good extent. But through that, very high achieving in school, very seeking of like external validation, good at sciences. So I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor that's just how I picture myself. So throughout university, I did all the pre-med classes and I thought I would apply to med school after my undergrad. But this wise part of me, I was the furthest thing from a procrastinator. I did everything a month early, but I kept postponing writing my MCAT. Like there's just something inside of me. There was this real resistance there. And so I kind of listened to that. And then when it really came time to apply, I just really realized that like my temperament was not suited to the medical field. Like I would have burned myself out so badly. I probably wouldn't have been able to sleep at night because I'd be studying so much because I felt like people were like lives were depending on me. Like I just knew that about myself. So, and that was weird, like not knowing what I was going to do next because I had this degree and I'd always been very like linear path kind of, but so becoming a dietitian was a little bit by default after that. I'm like, hey, what else can I do without having to redo my undergrad? Part of me already wanted to be a therapist, I think, because even though, so I did inpatient treatment when I was younger, but then lots of outpatient treatment throughout my teens and even during university. So I think being involved like that just shaped me so much. I never considered a career outside of somehow a helping profession or a medical career. Like I just never even entertained anything else. So I thought then I would be a dietitian and help people in the way that the dietitians had helped me. And I think because I also wanted to be a therapist, I kind of thought about combining those two. So that was kind of what led me to be a dietitian. It was originally aiming for medicine and then pivoting. And I realized early on how much I loved working with people struggling with eating disorders. People who knew me and my history didn't think it was a good idea. They're like, oh no, they'll trigger you or you'll trigger them, or, they just didn't think it was necessarily good, or they didn't trust my motivation for wanting to work with eating disorders. Maybe a little bit. I got that vibe sometimes, but I just, in my internship, I asked for some practice client patients who had eating disorders and just felt this real camaraderie with them and this real compassion for what they were going through. And even without self-disclosing, I could tell that they really appreciated my approach to them, like the non-judgment and the kind of getting it. So that's kind of what informed me to stay with that once I graduated with a dietetics degree. But working in the system here, I just never felt like I had enough time with patients. I was having to juggle like eating disorder patients, but also other clinical work. And so I wasn't crazy about that role. So I ended up, this is a out of character move for me, but I had my first serious relationship and both of us were burned out in our jobs. So we quit our jobs and went traveling for a year, which was really good for me. And that's when just in a newsletter, I somehow there was a mention of this new Carolyn Costin training that, was based on lived experience and you needed a university degree as a background, but it didn't matter what. And so I was really intrigued by that. So I ended up doing the training while we traveled, and I wasn't sure like how much I would do it or just go back to dietetics work, but I ended up doing it and being able to find enough work to just sustain that. And then I never ended up going back to dietetics. And because even in the dietetics work, I always like, we were only really supposed to book people for like 30-minute follow-ups, and I would book an hour follow-up just because there was so much to talk about. And I think I was really already doing the coaching type work within, because like we would only talk about their actual food so much, then it would turn into why they couldn't follow the meal plan. And we would, there was just so much to talk about more than just the meal planning. And so I love that aspect of the dietetics work anyway. So
Can you tell our listeners about your website and then in your practice?
So the website, I've just tried to make it as robust as possible, and anything that I think of to add, I'll create a new little page on there. So it's developed over the past, I guess, 8 years. There's some resource pages there with different resource pages, books, recommended podcasts, some of my own resources that I've created over the years. And originally, for the longest time, it was just me. But during COVID especially, it got really busy. There were so many reach outs during COVID. I think there was more need for virtual support. Mental health was more of a concern and a priority for people. And that coincided with me giving birth to my son for the first time, so cutting down my caseload. So I was just turning away so many people. So that's when I found some other recent graduates from the Carolyn Costin training who needed more clients. So I brought them on as contractors. So that's kind of, they've rotated through the years now, but I've always maintained 2 or 3 others who could take new clients when I'm full.
And what is the website if people want to look you up?
Yeah, it's just my name.com, unfortunately. Rzemieniak.com. They can click on the link. I won't spell it out.
It's a beautiful website with so many free resources
thank you.
listed. It really is.
It's a wonderful website, a wonderful resource. And I think, you're creative and you brought something new. It's very inspirational and motivation. You can see where your lived experience is represented there. And I just want to thank you for sharing this story, because you're really telling people you were young. It took years to recover. You worked hard. It was hard work. And then now you're really thriving. And part of that is, your personality, your determination, and your lived experience, which brings such a unique and essential insights into supporting anyone impacted. Carolyn Costin's training is exceptional. And just to share more of what Carolyn Costin coaching is like, will you tell us a little bit more about some of the key points and why this coaching is so important and a really powerful option?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the training, coaching is an unregulated field. So I got a lot of different people who knew what I was looking to do were like, oh, well, why spend money on a training? Just become a coach. You're already a dietitian, just jump into it. And but I just knew, first of all, my training as a dietitian didn't translate necessarily to the coaching work. And there are coaches out there who do only rely on their lived experience in their work with others. And I've seen how that can become problematic. I just think it's really important to have that objective training, and it incorporates what we've been through, but we learn general how to work with people, not just from what helped us, and just, and tips on how to bring our lived experience in a way that can be inspiring and helpful and not harmful, which it also can be with oversharing or sharing certain aspects. So that was really helpful. Yeah, there were lots of good, wonderful things I learned from Carolyn. She just knows so much. She's been in the field for so long. But also I think just the confidence of having it. I'm always someone who needs the letters behind my name to do anything. So I think it was just really helping me to feel okay, no, I'm credible. But yeah, the training was very robust and really, really useful. And in terms of I always find it the most helpful. I know Carolyn's mentioned before how one of the things she envisioned when she started training coaches was that she noticed that people in with like substance use disorders, like the AA community was so supportive for people and like such a thriving, just like a really huge resource for people. And there wasn't really that for eating disorders. I know there is like EDA and there are 12-step groups for eating disorders, but Carolyn really envisioned like coaches similar to an AA sponsor in a way. Like, so it's like, I find that is kind of how I feel sometimes with my clients where the texting in between sessions is really big. So like the informal reaching out in between their sessions is huge. So I'm not always able to reply right away, but the idea is that at any moment they're struggling, they can text me and that can really help them. And then we still have like video sessions, which are like more structured, usually about once a week, but they're just more informal. And that lived experience seems to be really key for people where they can ask me things about it for me, or sometimes I'm the only one on the team who has a lived experience. And so we don't even have to talk about what I went through, but just them knowing I know what's going on in their heads can be really powerful. Knowing that I got through it, and that really helps. So yeah, but it's really meant to be this like added in the moment support to kind of like help them implement the goals that may be set up with their treatment team, but then they struggle to do it in between sessions when the rubber hits the road on their own.
Absolutely. That ongoing support because it takes time and it's up and down and so it really, I think coaching is changing recovery on so many levels.
Yeah, I hear wonderful testimonials from all the coaches around the world now and their own clients and the therapists on their teams and stuff. Yeah, it does seem to be really, really helping. Yeah, and something I wish I had. I think that would have been really neat.
How long does the training take before you're...
It varies for people depending on how much time they can dedicate per week. I think I wasn't working, we were traveling, but I was spending quite a bit of time on it. And I think it took me about maybe 6 months or 6 to 8 months, I think, to do it. It's just a lot of material to read over, a lot of case studies, a lot of written answers. Yeah, different scenarios. I felt like she did a good job of making it quite rigorous. And then even like a practice client where you have to record your sessions and then she listens to them and gives you feedback. That was nerve-wracking. But it was good. Yeah. And there are 2 tracks for it. There's one track for those with lived experience and then a separate track for those without lived experience. And a lot of those are parents. So there are parents who are coaches too. And then mainly, well, coach everyone, but I think their passion is often coaching other parents. Yeah.
You know, we're tremendous believers in peer support and that it takes a village. And these people need a lot of support. And we had I facilitated our adult eating disorder group last night. And
yeah, you have the groups. That's amazing.
I love the groups. These people are so wonderful. And I love the way that they support each other. And, you know, just being able to talk freely and be honest with somebody else in the recovery. So it's wonderful to have a team. It's wonderful to have a coach. But it's like you can't have too much support. And it's voluntary, you know. But it just fills me up to be able to provide that space for family members and for the adults with eating disorders virtually and in person. But it and Jack's part of our in-person group and and part of our virtual family member group too. So this is what has to happen, and this is changing the way people look at eating disorders and begin to realize what's really required and how all-consuming these illnesses are.
And they need to, again, it's a cliche, but they need to know they're not alone. So
that's amazing. That's so neat. It's true. I'm always amazed. I always assume people know they're not alone, but when you meet someone who's never been to treatment yet and they've never met someone who's had an eating disorder, they really do feel like this is something they're going through and no one else understands. And yeah, totally.
And KMB for Answers is kind of winded down now. But Ellen, why don't you share with Sarah and our audience the focus you had for educating medical professionals?
The need, with my lived experience, the need for people to be aware, understand, know that there are resources, and also parents, everybody that we've already talked about, were desperate for information and training, and certainly clinicians are, whether they're a dietitian, whether they're mental health area, or wherever, are facing individuals with eating disorders, and they're just popping up in their client base. And so that need for all medical practitioners to really understand eating disorders and how to help somebody get help and address it is so important. So we focused a lot awareness and training for clinicians to expand that understanding so we have the resources. And that makes me think about when you said you were able to access treatment and you were not dismissed. That was so incredibly fortunate for you, and that you were able to access treatment, because certainly we understand, it depends, where do you live? What will you have access to? And that was existed 25 years ago, and it continues to this day. So our work is never done. I hate to say it, it's never done. We have to keep doing this. And I love the part of this conversation that's talking about the time it takes to recover. It's not a 2-week treatment. No. It's long. It's working long. So yes, so
100%.
important on so many levels.
No, that's amazing work.
So Sarah, when you reached out to me, you mentioned that you read our book and it touched you deeply, and that you were struck by the similarities in Emily's childhood and yours, and your temperaments, the trouble with sleepovers with others of the same age. We're fine with them, and you guys struggled with that. Both wanting to clean the family home from a very young age, and of course getting good grades, also playing the violin, running in high school, and before graduation making a poor decision to drink before a social dance or event that was out of character because you both wanted to fit in so badly. We made sure to include those things in the book because we rethink so many things now, and we think just bringing them to light might help someone else, even if it was just anxiety or not necessarily an eating disorder, but maybe. This was interesting because we've got lots of, wonderful feedback from the book, but nobody has ever touched on those things before. And when you said how they resonated with you, that really touched me. So what are your thoughts going forward about that?
Well, I was just so struck by that. I was like, wait, what? Like, because the way you put them in the book, I'm like, oh, those were really like kind of unique things about her. I'm like, those seemed like unique things about my childhood too. So I'm like, what are the chances that we had so many of these things in common, and what does that mean? Just so interesting. I think when I look back on my own story, I definitely see those things as just signs of the underlying anxiety and the need to feel a sense of control, or trying to feel a sense of control. So just really so interesting. It really speaks to the temperament piece, I think, of eating disorders. I know whenever I read like the kind of typical temperamental traits of someone who develops a restrictive eating disorder, I was like, check. So I'm like, I think there is really something to that. It's not just like a stereotype or a, cliche. So it must just been, it's just so interesting that for Emily and I, it just manifested in such specific ways. I thought that was just so interesting. The incredible. That's so when you were prefacing it, I thought you were going to say that you hear this from tons of people that like, that was my childhood too. So it's so interesting that that's not a common. So just so fast. I guess it manifests differently for for everyone, but just huge coincidence.
Or maybe you were just brave enough to admit it, and not everybody else was, right?
And that's what I was going to say. And so much of what we're trying to do is get people's stories out there, because, there are so many similarities. Maybe not this much, step by step like you and Emily, but there's just so many similarities out there that people, are holding back and still ashamed of, or still think about the stigma of coming out and telling the truth. And so that's, we're trying just to be wherever we are and here, and just a safe space for people to understand that they have the help and they need to come out and tell their story, because stories are so powerful.
But I always say also, but not everybody deserves to hear your story.
Well, that's
right?
true.
So, but it's important to share, because it takes a load off of you just to be able to be you.
No. Well, that's what I said. A safe space with people that do understand, to come out and really be truthful.
Yeah.
So, Linda always says, and if people are fortunate enough to get the best treatment, the rubber hits the road when they get out of treatment, and they have to assimilate back into the real world. My question is, sometimes the person's world is very small because it's a disease of disconnection. The old connections have moved on. So as a coach, how do you help people reassimilate back into their life and make new connections?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point and good question. Yes. And I think sometimes what happens is the life before it might not feel like it represents their authentic self either. Like on the surface, they might have a lot of things going, but they don't really feel seen for maybe who they really are. I feel like in the beginning, so much of the work is just them, I guess it's kind of, maybe there's different aspects to that process, because for one thing, I think, and I listened to the last episode with Dr. DeSarbo, which was wonderful. That was a really wonderful episode, but it really struck me how he put it about people being pushed through recovery versus having a reason to pull themselves through. That really, I'm like, oh, I've never heard it like put that, but I'm like, of course, that's a very understandable concept. But so what I was originally going to say is that first, I think usually with people, I try to focus on them really finding their sense of themselves again, like getting their recovery strong, and then this kind of sense of like their authentic self or their true self kind of starts to emerge, the part that's pushing it back against the eating disorder, the part that can really genuinely connect with other people from a vulnerable place and like really feel seen. And sometimes the eating disorder makes that hard for people, depending on the context. Obviously, in the groups, they might actually be able to come forward in that safe space. But I think sometimes in their daily lives and at work, it can be hard to feel like they're really connecting with other people when they are still really in the eating disorder. So I would say, like, usually I would prioritize them working on finding that sense of themselves first, and then connecting with their world from that place, because then they're aware of what their true passions are, and connecting with people who they really truly resonate with and can have really secure, fulfilling relationships with. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying, Jack, about how also having a world that isn't too small can also be the thing that helps them pull through to that point in the first place. So it's so tricky. Yeah, it's hard when someone's in the depths of their eating disorder. I think the groups that you're running are wonderful, because for some people, maybe that is one of the few places they feel like they can really be the most themselves, that they're able to be. It can be hard with coworkers and people who don't get it when their reality is very much the eating disorder still.
In Emily's case, and in many cases, there was people that were friends and stayed friends. But there's a lot of people that just a lot of people
had one really wonderful friend.
But a lot of people move on, and that's understandable. People married and they have families and they have jobs and life. So there's somebody I just saw that posted something about when they're in the depths of their eating disorder and are going through the recovery process and then coming out. It's like all those people, from years ago, they expected them to, be there again. And some may and some may not. And it's that everybody's kind of moved on and here I am now. I've lost how many years because of this eating disorder. And, it's just, again, for adults, that just adds to the shame and the stigma of what happened to their lives and how much of it was stolen by these insidious illnesses. And,
Well, there's something that our son pointed out to us when we were talking about relationships and friendships, and he's very good he's analytical and very good at statistics, but he says most people's friends change significantly every 7 years. And you think about that.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. And it does kind of make sense because your world kind of changes, when you're, from grammar school to high school to college to working to having a family maybe or retiring. I mean, you just kind of look at the different phases of your life and people come, people go, people move away. And there's a handful of people that you stay close to if you're lucky. But yeah, I had never thought about it that way before either. So that might be something that's really good to share with people who are struggling with any substance use, eating disorders, or any mental health condition that kind of separates you from people. But maybe it's not so unique because maybe there's a lot of people even outside of that world that are searching for new connections too.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe part of it is normalizing for them that experience of not feeling that connected. I think with social media, it's easy to think everyone has these really full, vibrant lives,
Right.
and a lot of people would like deeper friendships than they have. So, normalizing that. And
Sarah, do you work primarily with adolescents or adults, or is it a combination of all?
primarily adults. I really love working with adults. Once in a
Okay.
while, I've had younger. I also find it just more stressful work with adolescents. It's just a lot.
Well-
With the family has to is more involved, obviously, and it's just the adults are neat. They have so much insight and
Well,
yeah.
and
I
on
find I
many
vibe better.
levels, their plan may be a little different, and that this current ongoing discussion about really looking at your true self, I kind of say reclaiming who they were, because as we continue to talk about the extreme disconnect, and I think particularly with adults, that disconnect is expansive and broad, and being able to spend that time to work with those individuals to be, let's look at what's really important to you and help reconnect. What are some of the things that you do when you're helping people reconnect and remember who they were and all that they were doing and how they embraced life so fully? Because certainly we all know anyone impacted really had a very full and exciting, interesting life that they were fully engaged in. And that shifts.
Yeah. Right. Well, you know what? I've had a few clients over the years where they do feel like they never had that. So it's actually discovering it for the first time. And I've seen it happen in the most beautiful ways. So it's actually neat that people can find it within themselves, even when they don't feel like they have anything like a mixture of really tough childhood trauma, strange relationships with food from as long as they can remember. They sometimes feel jealous of people with those stories because they're like, well, for some people they can think of, but some people never had that. So even they can find it Gosh, it's so different with every client. Their journeys are so amazing to witness. I guess the main thing that I always come back to or just use is just really working to connect with the part of them that isn't the eating disorder part, however they identify with that, or whatever I can sense in them that isn't being run by that eating disorder part, and just trying to either speak to that part or get them to brainstorm ways of connecting more with that part of themselves, whatever that might look like. And when they have zero connection to that part of themselves, especially when early in treatment, trying to be that for them, like viewing them that way, just treating them with the compassion that I want them to start treating themselves with eventually. And I've seen it really blossom. Yeah.
Well, that's
And
kind
then,
of what it's
yeah.
all about. You truly are a gift
Mhm.
to your clients and your deep
Aw.
understanding and realizing that. And I thank you for saying, yeah, some don't have that background where there
Right.
were. And
Yeah.
so really pulling that through. And that takes time. It takes and to
Yes.
reinforce and
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm lucky that I cut back my caseload when I became a mom, but so I just had consistent small caseload, but I've had same clients for 5 to 6 years, and that's like weekly work. And so it's long, and they've done treatment programs before they start working with me. They're just working with me
Yes.
now that they're outpatient. So it's a long journey, but so that relationship really deepens over time. But yeah, this work is
And is
it's slow.
essential.
One way, yeah, one analogy I used with a client recently who was really having a hard time, but also frustrated with herself for having a hard time was I thought of this analogy once and just like wanting people to understand like what's being asked of people when they recover. But I was just telling her, I'm like imagine like as she's gaining weight and feeling like her identity is changing and her and herself and her other people's eyes is changing, and it's really hard that to like imagine a CEO whose entire life and identity is based around being a really high powered, well respected CEO and a billionaire. So that really defines him. And all of a sudden it's gone. He's broke and he doesn't have a job. Like how long, like how hard would that be for him or her? And how long would it take to reinvent himself and feel good about himself without those titles? Like, I feel like that's something maybe people can relate to a bit and like realize like what's involved here. So it can be a huge reinvention process. And like when everything you based your self-worth around and validated yourself on, like being the thinnest or striving to be the thinnest or just focusing on this is taken away, it's going to take time. And I think that speaks to the trauma that people can feel when it's forced on them in treatment. It's like you're taking away this thing that's been my core identity and my life route. It's slow, as it should be. I think the brain needs time to kind of
Absolutely.
wrap itself around it. Yeah.
Okay. So, as I said before, your website is beautiful. It has so much information and incredible free resources and a great list of book recommendations. I have read most of those books, and I always recommend The Four Agreements by Michael Ruiz because it's short, simple, and an impactful read, and it connects a person with their authentic self and living life according to their goals and values. So I love that book. And Carolyn Costin's 8 Keys to Recovery is a wonderful book for anybody who wants to understand more about eating disorders. And it's very highly regarded. And there was a lot of other books there too. But I'm just curious, what books that you recommend do you get the most feedback from the people you work with?
Yeah. I think a lot of my clients forget I have a website, and I don't think they go to my website and refer to it very much. But us, because I'm often bringing in book recommendations, they're like, "Oh, I've never heard of that." So I'm like, okay. But the ones that I find I'm recommending the most, often they're not related to it. The
Right.
number one that I often bring in is just Kristen Neff's self-compassion one. I feel like that is just such a foundational concept for people. And once that lands, that can be really such a huge asset for them when it comes to challenging the eating disorder and just starting to shift their relationship with themselves. So that's a go-to. The ones based around ACT, like acceptance and commitment therapy, I find people really resonate with, because it's kind of that idea of like challenges the perfectionism and the black and white thinking. It's like, oh, like I can have this thought and still act according to my values, or like, you know, I don't have to feel perfect all the time. It's okay if I'm not happy all the time. Or something can be hard and I can still do it. So sometimes I'll bring those books in. Yeah, The Four Agreements is beautiful. That book, and Tara Brach, if people are a little bit more like spirituality leaning, we'll do some of those ones.
Eating disorders are so much about what the person is struggling with emotionally before it became an eating disorder, you know? So it's just so many different aspects to tackle.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
So, I mean, there's a lot of people, we're all about recovery. Everything that Ellen's done through her 20 years of working in the eating disorder community, and even before KMB, I think, and what we've done is all about recovery. And, but there is that flip side of the people that don't get recovery and don't live through the battle of it. So it's important for people to understand it just to take it, the seriousness of it. So many people don't take it seriously enough, whether it's, you know, and people in the medical community themselves, you know, especially when somebody is a young person that's, you know, now we're down to 5 years old where people are starting to struggle, you know, and it just, you got to take it seriously from the get-go. And whenever that diagnosis is, whether it's 5 years old or 25 years old or 35 or whatever. So
no, it's it makes such a difference.
So how is your coaching different for men with eating disorders? And, you know, along with being a Carolyn Costin Institute Certified Eating Disorder Recovery Coach, you're a wife and you're a mother of your 2 young sons. So how will your life experience influence the way you raise your young 2 boys? And what words of wisdom would you have for other moms regarding finding a balance between work and family? And that's a lot of questions there, but
no, those are great questions. You know what? I have had probably only a couple of male clients. The majority really are women. I know my website can be a little feminine. That's just my own aesthetic. So I hope that doesn't deter me. It might deter. But I have had reach out, and one of my longstanding clients is a male. And the only difference I would say is, you know, maybe honestly, I don't find many differences. I was gonna say like societal or like pressure around weight, but honestly, not so much. Even men get that too, like comments on their weight, or, you know, so I don't know if there are. I haven't really tailored anything different for him at all, or any of the men I've worked with in the past, or as a dietitian. Yeah, it's amazing how universal eating disorders are. I haven't noticed many differences, not in the ones I've worked with. Maybe some men come at it more from like wanting to be bigger and really going for that like muscular physique, and maybe there'd be more differences there in their struggles, and I just haven't worked much with that population. But yeah, in general, I would say it's been quite similar with everyone.
And has he struggled? Has he struggled for years? I mean, some from teenage years?
Maybe more like in and out. And I'd say the actual eating disorder started actually more midlife. More midlife. He's older, but different forms of disordered eating throughout.
People don't realize. I mean, there's so much pressure on the youth, you know, peer pressure and peer pressures of social media and all that stuff. But it's still people in midlife, you know, people that are, you know, their body's changing, they're getting older, and there's certain things on their body that they look at and they go, oh, I don't like that anymore. So, and you can see an ad every day, you know, we can take away all those wrinkles, we can take away that flab, we can take, you know, and it's crazy with the amount of pressure that there is on people. And
I think we need some more role models. Real people role models who, I think Sally Field is one person who has just embraced where she is in life. And I think that is a great role model. I think we need more role models like that because, who we are is what we are inside. And yes, it's great to be neat and clean and present your best self, but it's just over the top now. It's just all about appearance. And I don't, it's about people first and who you are and what you bring to the table in relationships. And
I agree.
Yeah, this is just, I just feel sorry for the little kids, just growing up because this is all they've ever known. We've known a variety of things if we've been around the block a few times, but we've seen things come and go. But this has really just taken hold. And I think social media has been such a big reason why.
One thing I wanted to ask, are the GLP-1s, is that a problem in Canada like it is here in the States where it's just so prevalently, so used by everybody now?
There's a place for those.
Oh, absolutely.
But yes.
I mean, as a pharmacist, I saw the use, in diabetics and people, but it's just so prevalent and so easy to get now. So is that a problem in Canada too?
Gosh, I know they are becoming more available here. From like the exposure I see online, I see it mostly in the States and then how it influences people here because we're watching, Hollywood and big influencers who are usually in the States. But I think I need to look more into that. And actually on the ground, I'm not totally sure of like how prevalent it is becoming. I'm not seeing it in like my immediate circles, but for sure just its impact on the culture here and the drive for thinness. I think it's affecting everyone just because you see it on social media and in the tabloids so much now. Yeah. But I get ads for it on my social media. So I have a feeling it's becoming more available here. Yeah.
So can you speak to the work-life balance that Jack asked about?
Yes. Gosh, yeah, I feel like it's such an individual thing for everyone. I feel really lucky that I have been able to find something that feels like a balance, and it can still be hard. So, I mean, I lucked out in that my husband's job is steady enough that I could cut back when the boys were born and reduce my caseload, and that also very fortunate in that his job is quite flexible. So if I just have 1 or 2 sessions a day, either my parents do childcare or we sometimes have a nanny who can come in just for a few hours, or my husband is able to take them for a bit in the middle of his workday because often he's working from home. So I'm lucky there that we've pieced together and have made it work. But it's still tricky with the texting piece because that I can't schedule in, and so sometimes I'm trying to text while I've got the 2 boys with me, and that can be tricky. But yeah, I feel like everyone's situation is so different. Many friends, it's about finding, the right daycare and going back to work full time. Yeah, it's a juggle. And I think maybe that's part of also where recovery, and being true to yourself comes in, because I think it's also about knowing yourself. Obviously, just financially what needs to happen is often the predominant thing, but then if that's taken care of, then just knowing yourself and what fulfills you and giving yourself permission to do that. So for some people, they might realize that they thrive most at work and they have to challenge the mom guilt and be okay with returning to work, whether part-time or full-time. Or for others, it might be really realizing that they're happiest at home and giving up a job that they worked their whole lives for and have to work with the anxiety and guilt that comes from giving that up. So I think financial necessities aside, I think for each person, it probably just comes down to having done the work to know yourself as much as possible and to give yourself the permission and the grace to follow that. Yeah. But over here, it's been lucky to be flexible.
One last thought. All of us really appreciate the value of lived experience. And certainly over time, we're seeing where it's more common, it's talked about. What are your thoughts on how we can expand the integration of lived experience into treatment, research, support groups, things like that?
I mean, of course, coaching is one wonderful way, and it's becoming more. There are more coaches graduating, and it's becoming more recognized and becoming more part of a team. But also, I think there have been some wonderful, like, pioneering professionals. Carolyn Costin is one of them, and there are many where they are open about their own history, and I think that kind of challenges the stigma that people who have their own history shouldn't go into the field. Like, somehow it can't be trusted, or it's not like professional or kosher or something. So I think that paves the way for more people who have their own lived experience to be like, no, I'd be a great eating disorder therapist, or I'd be a great eating disorder physician. So that's nice. And I think more and more are feeling comfortable, like, self-disclosing that to patients. I think I sense that's probably harder for someone in like a more white coat type position to maybe self-disclose it. For a coach, it's so easy. It's on our website. It's front and center. For a psychiatrist, maybe it takes a little bit more nuanced how they disclose that. But regardless, I think even if they don't self-disclose it, I think no matter what, it comes across in the compassion and the empathy and the non-judgment. Yeah, for sure. Not that those without lived experience can't have that, but I think it sometimes takes a bit more education to get there if you don't have the lived experience. So yeah, different ways. And then the groups are wonderful, so people can meet other people with lived experience.
Well, our time is almost up here, so I'm so glad that you reached out. It's wonderful to have this conversation with you, and very special, those similarities that you had with Emily. So it just kind of resonates with me, and I won't forget these things. So let's stay in touch.
Yes, you are. You are
yes,
now.
You're the real deal, and
You're an Emily connection now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yes. Oh, it's wonderful meeting you guys after hearing your voices on my audio book.
It's awesome to meet you and have you share your story, because you inspire, even with our journey, to talk with somebody who came through it and is thriving and helping others, because that is all that we would have wished for our daughters. So when we connect with that, it's so beautiful and inspiring and heartwarming. And thank you. Thank you for all you do. And just
you guys are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I wish my parents had met you guys when they were going through it. You guys are incredible. Just your strength and openness and warmth is just amazing, especially with what you've been through.
Well, and right back at you. So
thank you.
Okay, so we extend our sincere gratitude to Sarah, and I don't dare pronounce your last name, Sarah. Can you say it for Rzemieniak?
Yeah, Rzemieniak.
Rzemieniak. And of course, thank you, our listeners. A big shout out to Rockbox Recording and Production, and Scott Fitzgerald, our remarkable sound engineer, for his exceptional production of our podcast, and so much more.
Woohoo! Please rate, review, share, and subscribe to this podcast, Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, on the platform you are listening on. Learn more about Linda and Jack Mazur, the founders of the Emily Connection, and their beautiful book, Emily, the Story of a Girl and Her Family Hijacked by Anorexia, available on Amazon.
And we're so happy to always have our co-host, Ellen Bennett, here, who brings over 25 years of lived experience with her community engagement and advocacy. Oh my God, her advocacy is unbelievable. Raising awareness and challenging the stigma associated with eating disorders and all mental health. And the discussions we have with all of our guests are so incredibly important, because it emphasizes the importance of mental health for every one of us. So thank you to our listeners. And again, Sarah, thank you so much.